Hello, this is a talk I gave on the quest for self-mastery at the European Conference in Spain in October 2022. So, what is self-mastery? Actually, it's a word that scares me a little. It obviously involves changes, challenges, tests and trials, and therefore courage. But I believe it is our raison d'etre, our goal in life, what we are working towards. It's who we really are. Our thought adjusters are doing all they can to help us become more than we are at this very moment. And it's all about getting out of our own way and realizing our potential. The process of becoming. It's about mastering ourself. So first of all, let's define self. The self is made up of body, the electrochemical mechanism of animal origin. Body is the one thing we have some control over. We choose what to eat and how much to sleep and exercise and how to take care of ourselves. Then there's mind, the thinking, perceiving and feeling mechanism on all levels. And this includes emotions, what you say and how you use your imagination. Then there's spirit, our thought adjuster, destined to become a part of us, who already has a perfect plan for our life. Then there's soul, our emerging Urantia self that survives death. And most important, personality, given to us by God, which is unique, changeless, and survives throughout eternity, and is distinguished by self-consciousness and free will. So, as you can see, self is a complicated thing to live with, let alone master. In my lifetime, I've done a fair amount of self-development work, taking courses, reading books, as I expect most of you have done too. This sort of thing can help, but to tell you the truth, it often made me feel inadequate. I decided that it may not be helpful to self-mastery, as perhaps it concentrates too much on self-importance. In paper 48, the Minister in Reserve on the First Mansion world say that we make everything worse by self-importance, taking ourselves too seriously. And that leads to increased burdens, lack of energy, leading to exhaustion. So this is what happens when we take ourselves too seriously. Letting go and leaving ourselves out seems to be more effective. Rodin asked, are we willing to be subject to this terrible process of self-destruction and soul reconstruction? Are you willing to be open to this terrible process? How is this happening in your lives? Are you able to see your disappointments and failures as the opportunities that they often are? There is often a seed of equivalent benefit in any difficult situation, often in unexpected ways. Hopefully, during this weekend, we'll learn more about how it's working in our own lives and how to improve our potential for success in self-mastery. Self-mastery is a huge adventure and an indicator of our spiritual development. So here, my friend Addie shows a few slides about the psychic circles. And I love the psychic circles. They're such an enigma. No one can tell us where we are on them, and we don't know what exams we've taken, passed or failed. To move onward, each of us has our own guidelines, and we're not allowed to know what they are. What a wonderful psychic circus. So it was Thoreau who said that most men live lives of quiet desperation. Well, we don't want that, so let's have a look at how this journey to self-mastery starts. We usually begin in our comfort zone, and it can be a bit scary, leaving the comfort of what we know. In your comfort zone, life just happens to you, but when you leave that zone, you make life happen. A good example of this is the apostles of Jesus. Can you imagine how they felt when Jesus called them? How would you have felt if someone had asked you to leave your job, home and family and follow a complete stranger spreading concepts that you couldn't understand? Well, it's not usually quite so dramatic for most of us. We usually begin our journey of life in a safe comfort zone. Have a look at this diagram. Can you identify your comfort zone, the area where you feel safe and in control? How are you challenged to move out of it? How easy is it to move out of it? If we cling to safety for too long, we wake up one day and look back on a life that's full of regrets and missed opportunities, a life that never was. It's much harder for some people, though. You may know of some who have been drug addicts or alcoholics. Their comfort zones have been extremely difficult to move out of. The need for safety keeps us clinging to the past, afraid of independence, freedom, the very things that our growth is demanding. We get consumed by anxiety, boredom, despair, emptiness, aimlessness, laziness, guilt, and shame. All those negative emotions that hold us back. So don't get stuck in your old ways and keep an open mind. Albert Einstein once said, the important thing is not to stop questioning. Curiosity has its own reason for existing. Then there's the fear zone. What are your fears? Areas in which you lack confidence, find excuses, or take on others' opinions. Areas in which you complain a lot or get angry. How can you observe those fears and transcend them? Then there's the learning zone. What is learning for you? Is it stopping consumption of harmful substances or certain negative behaviours? All the things that are delaying our self-mastery are within us. It involves self-control, exerting a strong will against our impulses to steer our future towards what we want it to be. It could be acquiring new skills or extending your comfort zone into new areas. Going out and doing new things is a real challenge for many of us. Then there's the growth zone. What is growth for you? Is it about setting new goals, finding new purposes, living your dreams? As children, we're intrinsically motivated towards growth. As adults, most of us get consumed by life's demands, and we give ourselves excuses that drive us away from growth, blocking our personal evolution. However, growth brings extra responsibility and demands, moving into the unfamiliar, and it can bring difficulties and pain. Safety is a more basic human need than growth. Choosing safety rather than growth can lead to disappointment. However, fighting against this destiny of growth can also bring depression and anxiety. How do we know when we're on the road to growth and self-mastery? Oh, it doesn't mean being successful. Many people who achieve success end up in drug or alcohol misuse and are miserable. Real self-mastery leads to feelings of happiness, a zest in living, more peace, joy, calmness, and more confidence in your ability to handle problems. I heard an interview with Eckhart Tolle explaining how peace had descended on him spontaneously one day, and he never felt like his old self ever again. His last thought was, I can't live with myself any longer. And then he thought, who am I if I can't live with myself? Who am I? There seem to be two people, the I and the self, a sort of spiritual schizophrenia. The idea that we have both a materialistic animal brain obsessed with material and animal concerns, as well as a spiritual side ever pulling us towards God and divinity. With Eckhart Tolle, it led to a realization that the I is not his thoughts. He managed to disidentify with the unhappy self that was telling him unhappy stories all the time. He removed himself from thought, and all that was left was the sense of inherent peaceful being. He managed to embody the peace, love, joy, and light that the thought adjuster bestows on us all the time, every day. The self that consisted of thinking couldn't survive and just dissolved. It was a sort of non-event as the ego disappeared. In most of us, this transformation happens gradually, slowly, with plenty of setbacks. It's a real adventure in consciousness. It's a bit like getting rid of old computer programs and not rebooting or putting in new ones, but just dismissing all programs and just being. Toller wrote the book The Power of Now, and self-mastery means living more intensely in the present, but escaping its limitations. So we have to make plans founded on our past experience and allow them to come into being in the present so as to enhance the values of the future. Immaturity, of course, concentrates on getting what you want in the present moment and not thinking about past or future. This is why having ideas and making the right decisions is so important. It suggests in the Urantia book that we delegate authority to our souls to make decisions for us. Moving from selfishness to unselfish service should be our purpose. Personality implies interacting with others, other personalities. Love your God with all your heart and your neighbour as yourself. Doing this through friendship and service work is perfect. In courageously walking the path of self-mastery, we can realise our true potential and live a truly unique and meaningful life. The path of self-mastery can be a lonely one with feelings of danger and responsibility. We have to cultivate inner strength, and no one can help us with this. We have to do it alone, by ourselves. Unless, of course, we're lucky enough to have others around us who are on their own path of self-mastery, and that certainly helps. We'll look at some empowering rituals that help us a little later, but first of all, I thought I would remind you of someone with a perfectly unified personality, Jesus, of course, the perfect example for all of us. How interesting that the Urantia book says that Jesus did not live on Urantia to be a perfect example of how to live life, but he came simply to live a genuine, true human life. This is what we all must do. But his life was also an inspiration to us, as we can see from his example, how we can aspire to be better people. He experienced the full range of emotions and passed through every stage, physically, intellectually, and spiritually, that we have to go through. He lived a perfect life, and it's something we can aspire to and be inspired by. The exquisite example of Jesus' life on Urantia is very important and very inspiring to all of us. It's incredible to me how much love Jesus showed to everyone around him all the time. His love was unstoppable and overflowing. How can we be more and more like him? How can we love our brothers and sisters with the overflowing love of Jesus? Perhaps we have to learn to place a high value on each person that we meet or who enters our lives. Jesus taught us to place a high value upon ourselves and upon each other. Jesus was a man just like us, and he had to go through challenges, pains, obstacles, opposition, just like anybody else. I believe he did this so much better than we do and managed to go through almost impossible obstacles because of his faith. Jesus had total faith in God and was willing to do his will. It was that inspired him to front any situation with serenity, confidence, and honesty. We need to take him as our inspiration and our guide. Section 7 of paper 100, The Acme of a Religious Living, has amazing descriptions of the Jesus personality. For example, at the beginning, Melchizedek of Nebadon says this: although the average mortal of Urantia cannot hope to attain the high perfection of character which Jesus of Nazareth acquired while sojourning in the flesh, it is altogether possible for every mortal believer to develop a strong and unified personality along the perfected lines of the Jesus personality. The unique feature of the Master's personality was not so much its perfection as its symmetry, its exquisite and balanced unification. So, getting balance in our lives is so important. The Urantia book even mentions the dangers of praying too much in isolation. A good example of balance is reading about Jesus' adolescence and how he was pulled in different directions by multiple responsibilities. This period of time, he was living his life closest to the lives we all live, providing for himself, providing for those who depended on him, fulfilling family obligations, having fun with friends, balancing the work of time and space with the work of eternity. He was defining and discovering himself. Jesus' early life shows us perfectly how to be patient and how to set priorities. To do what needs to be done as well as possible for the present and hold on to our aspirations and dreams for future reference. He showed us how to survive in this difficult world by hard work and love for our friends and family, but at the same time keep alive our religious life and our spiritual goals. Jesus' personality, Jesus' humanity as Son of Man is an example to all of us of a perfect man which we can aspire to. As he grew from a boy to a man, he saw his dreams and plans dashed by circumstances, yet he cheerfully continued his daily work, while also preparing for his future teaching career. As he grew, he developed qualities that we all need to nurture in ourselves: patience, tolerance, the courage to stand up for what you know is right, tenderness, love, the ability to work hard and long, but also to get a balance in life, practical optimism, seeing the positive side of situations, sympathetic listening, fairness, respect for others. Jesus never gave advice unless asked for or disagreed with people. Can we do all this? How do you react when faced with a problem? Jesus didn't think of problems like most of us do, as a situation that is unwelcome or something that needed to be dealt with. He faced every situation or problem as an opportunity to display understanding, to show love, and to inspire. All through his childhood, he faced problems or situations head on. He always sought to fully understand the situation, what others might be expecting, what traditions were, what the possible consequences of his actions would be, and most of all, how his actions would align with the will of his Father in heaven, whether it be a disciplinary situation with his brother Jude, a romantic involvement with Rebecca, not wanting to follow traditional Passover traditions, or how to set the family up financially so he might eventually leave. Jesus never failed to show love, to display understanding, to show responsibility, and to encourage responsibility in others. Let's look in a bit more detail at his amazing character traits. As we go along, perhaps you can apply these to your own personality. Jesus spread good cheer everywhere he went. He was full of grace and truth. His associates never ceased to wonder at the gracious words that proceeded out of his mouth. You can cultivate gracefulness, but graciousness is the aroma of friendliness which emanates from a love-saturated soul. Jesus really understood men. Therefore, he could manifest genuine sympathy and show sincere compassion. But he seldom indulged in pity. While his compassion was boundless, his sympathy was practical, personal, and constructive. Jesus was never in a hurry. He had time to comfort his fellow men as he passed by. And he always made his friends feel at ease. He was a charming listener. He never seemed to be curious about people, and he never manifested a desire to direct, manage, or follow them up. He inspired profound self-confidence and robust courage in all who enjoyed his association. He dispensed health and scattered happiness naturally and gracefully as he journeyed through life. It was literally true. He went about doing good. And there are some wonderful descriptions of Jesus from the point of view of the apostles. Look at these quotes. Increasingly, Thomas admired and honoured one who was so lovingly merciful, yet so inflexibly just and fair, so firm but never obstinate, so calm but never indifferent, so helpful and so sympathetic but never meddlesome or dictatorial, so strong but at the same time so gentle, so positive but never rough or rude, so tender but never vacillating, so pure and innocent but at the same time so virile, aggressive and forceful, so truly courageous but never rash or foolhardy, such a lover of nature but so free from all tendency to revere nature, so humorous and so playful but so free from levity and frivolity. It was this matchless symmetry of personality that so charmed Thomas. So there we have it. Jesus showed us how to unify our personality in the most perfect way. If you're like me, you take 2 steps forward and 1 back, or even 2 back, and you have to start all over again, remembering to be patient, or to listen more carefully, or not get annoyed with that really annoying person again. Self-mastery is a long-distance run with a lot of backsliding, so don't be too hard on yourself. Lighten up and try to be willing to laugh at yourself. Set yourself mini goals to help you make progress. Jesus lived this life in the flesh by the same mercy ministry that you all may live your lives. On earth. And as he lived his mortal life in his day, and as he was, so did he thereby set the example for all of us, thus to live our lives in our day and as we are. That's interesting, isn't it? As we are. And it suggests we should love ourselves, accept ourselves, not judge too harshly, and keep on growing and transcending. After all, God loves us just the way we are. Jesus was the perfectly unified, well-balanced human personality that emphasized positive human values and traits without ever going to any extremes. All Jesus' values as a mortal seem to be transferable to the spiritual realm, from the human Jesus to the divine Jesus, and this should be our goal also. So we all know that developing the fruits of the Spirit is the way to become more like Jesus. If then, my children, you are born of the Spirit, you are forever delivered from the self-conscious bondage of a life of self-denial and watch care over the desires of the flesh, and you are translated into the joyous kingdom of the Spirit, whence you spontaneously show forth the fruits of the Spirit in your daily lives. And the fruits of the Spirit are the essence of the highest type of enjoyable and ennobling self-control, even the heights of terrestrial mortal attainment, true self-mastery. Let's have a look at these fruits and try and work out how far we have to go. It's the adjectives that I love the most. And the fruits of the divine spirit, which are yielded in the lives of spirit-born and God-knowing mortals, are loving service, unselfish devotion, courageous loyalty, sincere fairness, enlightened honesty, undying hope, confiding trust, merciful ministry, unfailing goodness, forgiving tolerance, and enduring peace. And we're all fair, loyal, and devoted at times, but being sincere in our fairness, courageous in our loyalty, and unselfish in our devotion takes things much deeper on a more divine level. Self-awareness is needed to know what we lack and where we need to make improvements. Self-awareness means gaining an understanding of and insight into our strengths, qualities, weaknesses, defects, ideas, thoughts, beliefs, ideals, responses, reactions, attitudes, emotions, and motivations. Also, it means gaining an understanding of how we are perceived by others. There are many simple practices that we can do to get ready for this transformation, and hopefully we'll talk about these in the workshops later today and tomorrow. But there are also some basic requirements that must come first in order for them to be effective. These are the basic practices. Prayer. This requires focusing the mind, staying present, addressing deity, and while you're there, don't forget to throw in a request for improved mastery over whatever issue is of most concern to you. To Jesus, prayer was a sincere expression of spiritual attitude, a declaration of soul loyalty, a recital of personal devotion, an expression of thanksgiving, an avoidance of emotional tension, a prevention of conflict, an exaltation of intellection, an ennoblement of desire, a vindication of moral decision, and an enrichment of thought. Then there's worship. True religious worship is not a futile monologue of self-deception. Worship is a personal communion with that which is divinely real, with that which is the very source of reality. Man aspires by worship to be better and thereby eventually attains the best. Meditation. The ability to calm the mind, clearing it of thought, requires focus, practice, and discipline. The results of this momentous season of meditation demonstrated conclusively that the divine mind has triumphantly and spiritually dominated the human intellect. The mind of man has become the mind of God from this time on. And though the selfhood of the mind of man is ever present, always does the spiritualized human mind say, "Not my will, but yours be done." Service. Jesus often took his apostles away by themselves for short periods to engage in meditation and prayer, but for the most part he kept them in service contact with the multitudes. The soul of man requires spiritual exercise as well as spiritual nourishment. So each of these practices are essential to the increase of the fruits of the Spirit. And the important thing is that they should become daily life experiences. Our daily appointments with God and our thought adjusters are the key to self-mastery and our spiritual development. It's so easy to make excuses, but how can we expect to become more like our Father or even do his will if we can't take time to be with him every day? Collaboration with our thought adjuster, according to the book, isn't a conscious process, but consists of making decisions and determinations, the desire to be godlike, living a light-hearted and joyous life of loving service. Life should be based on truth, beauty, and goodness. In the workshop after the presentation, we are going to consider how all these factors work in our own lives, and I call it the art of living. Rodan of Alexandria, the Greek philosopher, spoke a lot about the art of living in paper 160. He said that the true badge of social maturity is the willingness of a people to surrender the right to live peaceably and contentedly with established beliefs and conventional ideas in a complacent, conforming way for the pursuit of a more idealistic spiritual reality. How can we do this? We'll discuss our own progress from comfort and convention through fear and learning to self-mastery. The God-conscious mortal is certain of salvation. He is unafraid of life. He is honest and consistent. He knows how bravely to endure unavoidable suffering. He is uncomplaining when faced by inescapable hardship. The combination of animal nature with a spirit indwelling is the human paradox. Trying to transcend being a creature of material nature with a lower material mind and becoming mind spiritualized is the challenge. This is the reason why there are so many steps backwards as we're moving forwards. All the mind can do is discover, recognize, interpret, and choose. Choosing, making decisions, is the most important thing. Choosing between the thought adjuster's spiritual values and our own mortal inclinations. I'm sure we all experience this every day. Emotions are a minefield. I'm certainly more conscious of my decision making and try to remember to ask in meditation if there's any reason I should make a different decision, one more in harmony with God. I don't think I'm so good at listening for answers, and I'm working on that. If I'm not sure what to do in a particular situation, I ask myself what Jesus would have done. Usually the answer is that he wouldn't have got into that situation to start with. Just being aware that we have help within to call upon is comforting. Remember, everything we need is already within us. It says in the Urantia book, there truly exists within you a conspiracy of spiritual forces, a confederation of divine powers, whose exclusive purpose is to effect your final deliverance from material bondage and finite handicaps. Remember to cooperate with them. Our thought adjuster has a plan for us. He knows our potential, and we need to actualize that potential. This is self-mastery. I mentioned earlier how difficult it must have been for the apostles to leave their comfort zones and follow Jesus. However, in a way, Jesus is asking the same of us. We've been given so much truth and wisdom in this Urantia revelation, and in a way, it is our responsibility to become more than we are. Not many people on the planet know what we know. So are we the new apostles? Are we willing to be tested and go beyond our limits? We have to step out in faith and do the seemingly impossible. We have to learn to live beyond our expectations, live beyond ourselves, beyond our limits, just to live in our own small confined self, afraid to reach out beyond our limits, afraid to put life to the test, will get us nowhere. Jesus said, "Fear nothing, simply know I'm with you always and will guide and direct your every step." We have to trust God and know that if we put him first, anything can happen. And we can expect miracle upon miracle. When man goes in partnership with God, great things may and do happen. God's only purpose and his entire plan is to promote our individual eternal success. Self-mastery is a journey that lasts more than a lifetime, and there are no shortcuts. My advice to myself is never give up. Learn from your mistakes and try and do better next time. God doesn't expect perfection from us. He just expects us to do our best. Self-mastery is a process, and it needs a lot of patience. No miracles needed, no superpowers, no armies of angels. Just what we think, say, do, feel, and give to each other sets our souls on the path to self-mastery. Thank you.